G'day everyone, another video. Going to do a first impressions on the Nightforce Nx8. This is the 2.5 to 20x50 first focal plane. It's the Mil-C f1 reticle. And I haven't done a stack of shooting with it yet because I basically purchased this scope in preparation for a rifle that I don't have yet. That rifle's on the way, it should be here within the next month hopefully. So in the meantime, the Nightforce has basically just become a bit of a tester on the little Tikka 223 that I have here. So I'm going to do a pros and cons list. I haven't done a stack of shooting with it yet, as I said, so it's basically just going to be a first impressions, and then I'll be doing follow-up videos as the build progresses. Once I get this new rifle, throw this scope onto it, and it should be a pretty nice rig. So anyway, without further ado, first pro, flip up caps. They come with the scope. They come with a lot of Nightforce scopes, potentially even all Nightforce scopes, don't quote me on that, but very nice touch. It's nice having that bit of protection there for your, like the front and rear element of your lenses. Just nice having, they're very quick to flip up. Positive click, got these little tabs, just flip them up. So I like having that touch. The second pro is the weight, and this scope, don't quote me, it's about 810 grams. Could be a little bit more, could be a little bit less. I don't remember the specs, and honestly there's that many specs. Like Nightforce have all this on their website anyway, but I thought I would mention it. The main reason I bought this scope was for the weight of it. It's going to be going on a very lightweight rifle, and I wanted a lightweight scope that I could do a lot with, and this scope really fit the bill. So the lack of weight in this scope was definitely a pro in my eyes. The zoom range. So going from 2.5 to 20 power, obviously a massive zoom range, and I believe having such a large zoom range can cause some issues with, in terms of, Remy just shook underneath the pool table here, sorry. I believe having such a large zoom range can have an effect on the fussiness of the eye box and sometimes the optical quality. I haven't noticed any issues like that so far, but I will say having that 2.5 to 20 power is basically as good as it gets really in terms of versatility. I can have it on 2.5 power, shoot close range. I can wind it all the way up to 20 power, shoot long range. Like it's just a very, very good zoom range for me. There's been quite a few instances where I had the old Z5 3.5 to 18 by 44 Swaro, and on 3.5 power, sometimes if you were stalking Samba, sometimes even 3.5 power it nearly felt like too much zoom. So being able to get down to 2.5 power is a big positive. The next pro I've got is first focal plane. Now Nightforce doesn't do a stack of first focal plane scopes, but the NX8s, I don't even know if they do a second focal plane NX8. So I like that feature. I personally prefer first focal plane. I normally hold windage, so I want to be able to hold wind on whatever zoom range I'm on. I'll normally always dial distance, but I'll normally always hold wind. So personally, for me, having first focal plane is a big plus. And I also like how fine the reticle is, but it's still usable on 2.5 power. They've got very thick horizontal posts, which really let your eye basically find the center of your scope. And you can make a shot on 2.5 power. A lot of scopes are basically useless on the lower zoom because the reticle becomes so small and undistinguishable that you can't see it, and that's why a lot of hunters will prefer a second focal plane scope. But I find with a Christmas tree style reticle, first focal plane definitely suits me more. So first focal plane, another pro to this scope. Another pro on the list I've got here is the reticle itself. Now this reticle, obviously the Mil-C, and it's first focal plane. The Mil-C reticle is very nice. I'll try and chuck in some photos or something like that in the video here of the reticle so you can actually have a good look at it. But tiny little center dot like a floating dot in the middle of that reticle. It's probably one of my favorite things. Most of my scopes, even the Carl's 624i has the exact same thing, that floating dot, and I personally really like it. Compared to having a thick crosshair versus a floating dot, like in these, it's night and day. The precise aiming point is so much better in my opinion. I much prefer having a reticle like this than a standard duplex reticle. Next pro I've got on the list is the Nightforce reliability. So admittedly, like I said, I haven't done a heap of testing with this scope, but you do have that Nightforce name, and yes, this scope isn't cheap, but Nightforce is very well known for being rugged, for being tough, and I don't see why this scope would be any different. So obviously time will tell on that regard, but it is nice having a scope that in theory should track very true, should hold zero, and shouldn't give me any issues out in the field. Next pro, illumination. Same thing, first focal plane scope like this with a very fine reticle almost needs illumination to be used on the lower setting. This does have illumination, so that's another pro. It's quite bright as well, it can be used in daylight. What else have I got? I've got capped windage as a pro. Same thing, I personally hold wind, so I don't want to touch the wind dial at all. And I think that's really smart that they've done a capped windage. You can take the cap off and dial your windage if you want, but personally, like I said, I hold wind, so I have no need to touch that once it's zeroed. And another mention on the turrets is they're very, very audible. They're not too loud, but they're very positive. If you're making click, and a very positive zero stop. Another positive on the pros there is the good zero stop. Okay, I've probably missed something. I'll quickly throw lever, can quickly dial your zoom in and out, very easy. Smooth side parallax. Parallax isn't numbered, you've just got some hash marks here. Don't know whether you'll be able to see it. Whether I'm a fan of that or not, I'm kind of used to the Carls where I have that marked parallax, and it's very accurate on the Carls, but it's no deal breaker. I mean, ideally everyone should be fine tuning their parallax anyway. You shouldn't be just dialing to a specified number on the side of it. Everyone's eyes are different, so it's not a deal breaker for me. Next up, we are going to move on to the cons. I believe that's all the pros. I've probably missed something, so hopefully not. Now, there's not a lot of cons with this scope, but the very, very first one I will mention, the illumination, I'll just spin this around, is turned on via this Nightforce button. So if I press that, theoretically, just check it. Yeah, press it in, illumination's on. Now, and then hold it in, and illumination's off. Some people will like that, others won't. I'm personally not a big fan. I'd probably rather having the traditional illumination either on top of the windage or behind it, something like that. Whether they did that to save down on weight, very possible. I'm not a big fan of it. It is quick and easy to use, it just feels kind of cheap. I also don't like to scroll through the brightness settings. It is a little bit of a pain. There's like on the instruction manual, there's basically a list of, you've got to hold this down for 3 seconds to do whatever. I'm not going to go into details there because I can't even honestly remember it myself. It is a little bit complicated though, versus just your standard illumination dial that you can scroll through each step in brightness and it has an off in between. I'd probably prefer that. Same thing, not a deal breaker, just not a massive fan of it. The next con I have is the illumination area. So the whole reticle basically lights up. Not a fan of that. I'd much rather it if just the more central part of it lighted up. Admittedly, on 2.5 power, when you do light it up, you know, it is a very solid aiming point, and they may have done that on purpose, but well, see, I don't even know what I've done. I've just made the illumination green. Now I've got the red flashing. I think it's off now. It's just a bit, yeah. Don't know, just not a massive fan of the illumination being on that button. I'm sure once I get used to it, maybe I'll love it, and maybe that would become a pro, because all I've got to do is hit that button. But for the time being, yeah, not so sure. And the last con I have on the list is the mounting options. Now, most people are going to run this on a pick rail, so it's not that big of a deal. But as you can see, this front ring has an extremely small amount of space that you can move your scope forward and back for your eye relief when you're mounting on a rifle. So if you don't have some sort of rail when you're basically mounting this scope, you've got not much room to play with. And I'm sure the way they've designed it, it's sort of gonna work on most rifles and most bases, but it's something to mention. There's not a whole lot of movement there based off this front ring, because that part of the tube's, like I say, not very long. So anyway, I'm gonna try and get a few videos or photos somewhat through the scope, so you can have a look at the reticle, so you can have a look at the illumination, maybe get an idea of what I'm talking about. But that's about it for now in terms of the first impressions. I'm going to try and get this scope out fairly soon, and even if it's just shooting some rocks at 500-600 yards and just having some fun. I've shot a few rocks out at 400 and 500 with my brother the other day. I didn't video anything though, unfortunately. I really should have. But so far, so good. The scope seems to track well, and I'm intending on doing some more videos on it soon. So anyway, cheers guys, hope you've had a good weekend. Alright, so here's the clicks and your zero stop. Very positive. Zoom ring. That throw lever is real nice. If you had gloves or something on, that's going to help a lot with that. Without the zoom ring, you know, you've still got this little part here that you can sort of use, but I quite like having that zoom ring. Parallax. It's smooth, but it's firm. So if you set your parallax, you're not going to knock this. If you have your rifle in a sling, you know, your turrets aren't going to accidentally move, I don't believe. If they did, you've got your zero stop anyway. But your parallax also isn't going to shift by accident. It's firm but very smooth. Then over here, capped windage, like I said. Very solid clicks. But like I said, I don't have any need to adjust that because I hold for wind.